Good morning, and it is Tuesday, April 20th. Today, we are going to be taking some notes. So, you will actually want to get some paper, lined or blank printing paper. So, I will be using just plain paper. Lined paper will work just as well as plain printer paper. We're going to be doing things in what we call landscape. So we're going to have it, instead of this way, we will have it sideways. You can see I actually have a sample copy ready to go to show you. So we started on plant systems last Wednesday. We're moving really fast. We're actually going to finish the plant system unit on Wednesday. And I decided, instead of making everyone take a big 20 to 25 question exam after such a short time, we're just going to do a quiz this week on Tuesday, so today, and a quiz tomorrow on Wednesday over what we have learned. So you've done your plant systems foldable. Some students did this in class. Some of you are at home. So you were given the PowerPoint version. So you still had to do transport for your root system. You had to do your shoot system, which also has transport in it for stems, leaves, and flowers. And then you actually did your stems versus your leaves, because there are different components within. And then you did some research about reproduction in flowering plants versus gymnosperm type plants. And last but not least, we finished with some tropisms, which are really important to know and understand about plants. So you were just kind of looking at all the pieces that make up plant systems. We finished our animal systems unit, and we saw, you have a cell makes a tissue makes an organ, organs make organ systems, and then groups of organ systems can make up organisms. And it's very easy for us to relate to animals, since we ourselves as humans are actually part of kingdom Animalia. Trying to relate back to Kingdom Plantae isn't as easy, because they're very different from us. They don't walk, they don't talk, they really don't show emotion to us like we even see with animals around us. So it kind of sometimes makes it a little bit difficult for us to relate to plants. And yet they're so critical to our survival here on Earth. So a few things that I think of immediately when I look out and I see plants, I go, well, they're sessile. What does the word sessile mean? That means they don't move around. They don't get up and go from a dry area to a wet area if they need a drink of water. If it's too sunny and they need to get out of the sun, they can't just go find a shady place. They have to actually just stay where they are, and hopefully they have the adaptations, like we talked about in evolution, to survive the conditions around them. They're autotrophic. So what is autotrophic? Well, that means that they make their own food. Typically, plants use the sun to create their sugars or glucose required for their energy production. So they go through photosynthesis, which we will cover again later during our EOC review time. The 99.9% of animals, they're not autotrophic. We have recently, in scientific discovery, found a few animals that have some symbiotic relationships with algae, and so they actually picked up a little bit of photosynthetic capability by way of symbiosis, which is really cool. But overall, plants do it really wonderfully. They don't have to consume other organisms for their nutrition, for their sugar production. They go ahead and just use the sun, the water, and they're good to go. One thing to consider when you see the honeydew plant or the Venus flytrap, a lot of people think, oh, well, that's how they're making their food. They're eating insects. Actually, those particular types of plants carnivorous plants, they eat insects. They don't do that to make their glucose. They actually break down to get the nitrogen. So think about the soil around the plants, and they need to take up the minerals from the soil, which includes nitrogen and carbon. A great way for plants to get nitrogen if they're in soils that are low in nitrogen is to go ahead and be able to consume some insects. So those types of plants tend to be in soils that are low in nitrogen, and they've developed a way over time through evolution to eat insects and get what they need. Let's see, other things that I think about differences in plants: they don't have arms, they don't have legs, they don't have a head, we can't see a brain. So again, it's hard to relate back to them. But what's really cool is even though they have all these not like us sort of things, they actually have found ways around their knots. They don't have this. They are not doing that. They actually make their own food. So I talked about photosynthesis. They have to produce energy. They do the cellular respiration to create ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, to do their cellular processes, just like all the other organisms out there that we've talked about. And of course, cellular respiration was a long time ago. That was October, September timeframe when we talked about that. But even plants do that. And considering that they're sessile, they don't move, it's really good that they make their own food so that they can make their own energy. What things can I say that are similar about plants that maybe you've thought of, maybe you haven't thought of? Well, plants are eukaryotic, so they have complex cells. They have different membrane-bound organelles. Remember, nice and complex. They even have special membrane-bound organelles that animal cells do not. They have that nucleus. Remember, eukaryotic organisms have a nucleus, so that would be kingdom Protista, kingdom Fungi, kingdom Plantae, and kingdom Animalia. And we're talking about kingdom Plantae right now. They have that nucleus that has DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, inside. And of course, if you've forgotten, DNA is the code for all living things here on our planet. So if it has DNA, that is the code for making an organism what it is. We have the same code as a carrot. It's the order of the bases, the thymine, adenine, cytosine, and guanine, that make us human and not a carrot. A lot of students heard that a lot in the classroom, that, hey, we're not a carrot because of the order of the bases in the DNA. Plants, I talked about animals being composed of cells. Plants are also composed of cells, and those cells come together to make tissues, and those tissues make organs. Those organs in plants even make organ systems, and organ systems come together to make organisms. So even though we see them to be so different from us, they're actually very, very similar in many ways. And so some of the things that I've written down for you to think about as you were making your foldable, I have it right here. So plant systems may seem simple and uncomplicated, but they are just as complex as we are. And I gave you some reasons why, and then I rewrote it here for you. They have cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems too. And these all ensure the plant's survival. So what goes into these systems? I started on tropisms, but we're actually going to do a little bit of different information before we start talking about the tropisms. I want us to remember that plants have leaves, they have stems, and they have roots. And all of these come together to make systems. So these systems are composed of cells, and the cells could make up xylem or phloem, so things that we should be aware of. There are cells that make up the root hairs, the root cap, the root tip. So all of this goes into that very complex root system of the plants. Your shoot system, it was very similar to the roots, except for it had something called pith, which kind of helps give that support, kind of like a skeleton, if you will. Then you saw your xylem and phloem was moving stuff around just like it did in the roots. Then for leaves have a lot of different types of cells if we were to go into all the different cells that make up our leaves. But again, we see the xylem and the phloem. The reason we keep seeing xylem and phloem throughout these systems is because that is the transport system. It's the vascular system. So think about our circulatory system. It's moving the blood, it's carrying the waste and the oxygen, the carbon dioxide, so things we need to the cells, moving the things out of the cells not needed. And it's the same here. They have xylem and phloem as their vascular system, moving the water down from the leaves, moving the water up to the leaves, and the minerals also up to the leaves from the root system. The leaves are where they need that water to do or conduct photosynthesis, so make their energy. They make their energy, and then they pull in their carbon dioxide from the bottom of the leaf. They go through photosynthesis. The sugars can be transported to the phloem, and then the sugars can flow down. If you look at the P on your stems, they'll flow down the stems to the roots, and now the roots are going to get glucose as well, so that they can convert that into ATP down here in these cells, so that they can be taking up the water and taking up the minerals. That would then go up the xylem, and that would go to the leaves, and now the leaves are getting water and minerals to do photosynthesis, and the leaves even need to make energy. So everywhere, we need glucose to move everywhere. So I always thought that was really neat to find out, wait, they have a circulatory system called a vascular system. And it's just xylem and phloem, and all of this stuff is moving through. So that's kind of our intro to us taking notes. I'm going to break it up so that you can kind of take a break, think it through, get out your foldable if you need to so you can refer back to it. And then what we'll do next is we'll relate these tropisms, because these are some big pieces of information we need to know. And I'll probably tell you a little bit of extra about the leaves that you might want to be aware of. Another system that the plants have that's pretty cool.